Hello my friends, welcome back to another tutorial. I hope you're all keeping very well out there and painting wonderful artwork. I can see the work you're doing. It's fantastic. You should be proud of yourselves. Okay, this tutorial, I found a little photograph here. I think it's going to make a nice tutorial. It's a little seascape. I don't know if you can see it behind me here. Let me show you up close. And I know a lot of you may not be into seascapes as much. I know you might prefer landscapes or still life, that kind of thing, but I like to keep seascapes a regular part of my channel because you learn so much from seascapes, mixing softening colours together, lights and darks. It's just so interesting to learn from a seascape, and this one is very eye-catching. So here it is. I don't know if you think you'll be able to do that, but I promise if you follow me along and take your time, and we're going to do section by section, you will have no trouble painting this and making a lovely painting. I just think a lot of people love water, and water makes people very relaxed and calm. It has a very calming effect on the mind. So I love painting seascapes for that reason. It's just so relaxing. So I hope you enjoy it. I have a 16 by 16 canvas, nice square canvas. This is slightly wider, but I'll make it fit, if you understand what I mean. And I'm not going to prime this canvas. It's already primed. It's a good quality canvas, so I don't need to prime it. I might give some linseed oil or something just for the top half. But look, we're going to do this in two parts, part one and part two, so we can take our time. And what I would suggest to you is focus on one section at a time. So when I was growing up and I started painting, I found it much easier to kind of block out parts of the photograph. So I would cut a square of paper with like a window in the middle, and I would then move that around and focus on different parts, because what happens when you're looking at a photograph is if you're painting a certain little piece, you could still see everything else around that piece which you're painting. So your eyes are still seeing it, and it looks like there's a lot going on, and it makes it seem very complicated. But if you put a little square and just show the piece that you want to paint and block everything else out, it just helps you focus on that little piece. So it's almost like painting a little painting and then a little painting and so on. So each section at a time. I find that's much, much better than just looking at an entire photograph. So if you're having trouble separating elements of a painting, I would do that. Just focus on one little square. It just makes life much easier, and I've always adopted that method when I'm painting, because you'll see me paint the sky first, then the hills, then the trees, etc. So I focus in on each section. So I've just become accustomed to that way of painting, and I find it much, much easier to put a painting together without getting confused and overwhelmed with so many different parts of a painting. So try it and let me know what you think. It will help, I promise. Enough of me blabbing on. Let's get cracking and painting. I have a new colour as well, which I added to my palette only because I had it in my box for years. I never used it ever. It's dioxine purple, and I think just to mix it up a little bit, there's some nice warm colours in this, warm blues. I think a little bit of purple from a tube will try it and just see how it goes, but you don't necessarily have to use this colour. Okay, let's have some fun. I'll be right back. Alright, this is the setup I have. I'll tell you first what colours I have. Titanium white, Naples yellow, phaylo blue, magenta, dioxine purple, cadmium yellow pale, lamp black and burnt umber. Those are the colours. We might not even need burnt umber in this. We might not need it, but I put it there just in case, okay? This is my canvas, not primed. The first thing I always do is put in a very rough sketch of what's on the painting, okay? So look, I'm going to start with the wave. You see just the tip of the wave there below the foam. So I'm going to come up a decent bit. Now this is a green pencil. I don't know where I got this from, but it's there, so I'll just use this. It's okay. Let's go like this. And then another piece comes up. It joins and comes up like that, doesn't it? What I'm trying to do is squeeze that slightly wider photograph into a slightly smaller space. That's quite easy, really. We have another nice bit that comes like this, coming down. And this is where the light really kind of brings everything to life. For me, this is the important, just this area. I want to focus a lot of work on this area later in part 2, because it's all about the way the light catches some of the foam. I love that. It really does make it very eye-catching, I think. So I'm just putting in very loose little reference points of where the light areas are catching. The foam, all that splash up there, just like that, okay? Nothing too fancy. And that's it, that's all I need to draw. Very, very simply. I'm going to take a big brush. This is a 3/4 flat, soft brush. If you have a bristle, it's absolutely fine. It's just to cover in this top half. You've a lot to do up here. Now, what I was saying earlier, what I might do is, I might just put a light, very light coat of my thinners on this. Now, my thinners today is turpentine with a little linseed oil mixed in. That's all it is. So you can see it's slightly yellowy, but it's very little linseed oil. That's my thinners. I use that for thinning and for coating the canvas as well. All that does is it just soaks into the canvas and it takes that dryness out of the canvas for you. And it just allows the paint to sit there much longer and make it much smoother as well. So I'm just putting a very quick coat of this over the top half of my canvas there, just for my water. That just helps the paint go a little bit further, because sometimes if you don't do that and you have a big canvas, you could spend ages and ages doing this, trying to get the paint to cover the canvas. Whereas doing it like this, it's very simple and it goes much further. Now, I've taken phthalo blue on a damp brush, titanium white. I do hope you enjoy this tutorial now, because I think this is going to be lovely when it's finished. And a very eye-catching type of a painting as well. So, phthalo blue with some white. Just looking at that now, I'm going to go for a medium shade. You can see there's lots of lights and darks up there. It's actually quite simple to achieve. Just follow me along. Now you see how easily that's going on. Look, a nice thin coat. And that's just going right across there with one brush load. If I didn't have this thinners on my canvas, this would have been gone in about that much. It would have been completely gone off my brush. So just putting that little bit of thinners on the canvas, it just makes such a difference. It allows you to get a lot more out of your paints, which is how it should be really, because paints are expensive. And over the years, I've learned to get the most out of my paints, because here in Ireland, oil paints can be quite expensive. They really, really can. Now I've taken some magenta and some white in there as well. Just warm that slightly. And for me, the trick with this tutorial, with this kind of a painting right now, is nice rich colours, because sometimes you'll find your colours may look a little washed out and very sort of pale. But what I want to do is give nice, rich, strong colours. And you can see now where I'm starting to work, it's sort of almost dried in again. So I'm just going to go again and take another tiny, tiny amount of my thinners, just to help me along, that's all. Little bit of thinners on your tissue like that, rub it across. It just makes such a difference. Now once I have this base colour on, it's then, the canvas is wet with paint, so it's then quite easy to add after that, okay, you see? I'm just worried about getting my first very thin watery layer onto the canvas. You can see how thin that is, look, it's like watercolour, look, very thin. Just soften it across, because this is just a base for me to put thicker colours over. And thicker colours will stick much, much easier and cover much, much easier, because I have this on my canvas already. One thing to bear in mind, so if you take a look at the reference photograph, you can see the splash here. It's nice and kind of white, and there's a bit of pink going through it. The secret for that then is to have a nice dark background, so that splash will show later on. We don't want to have a light blue splash against a light blue background, do we? So you want to have a nice dark background for this. I'm going to just start darkening ever so slightly, my background. Magenta, phaylo blue. And maybe a touch of black, just to really to dull it down. And then some white. Look, now take some thinners on your brush as well. You don't want it too thick. I'm not using just paint on its own. Aha, that's better. Now you see we're going with a slightly thicker colour, less thinners in it, and we're able to darken this lovely without disappearing too much. You see what I mean? So that's why I always tend to start with a very thin layer at the very beginning. It just, do you know what? It just helps so much. I'm going to try some of this new purple. It's my first time trying this purple in about 10 years. I bought this tube about 10 years ago. It's my first time trying it. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I just kind of saw that in my box and I thought, look, come on, why not? Let's be adventurous. Take a bit of that, mix it in with this bluey colour we have, maybe even add a little bit of black to that. So we have a kind of a pinky grey. And I'm going to soften that from the top down. A very important part of this is when you're painting stuff like this, like a distant ocean or whatever, always go horizontal like this, look. I'm just doing little flicks horizontally. Because as they disappear into the distance, they're going to get very flat. It's the very same with clouds in the sky, in the horizon. They get very flat like this. So just use the tip of your brush and a couple of little flicks like this, look. Very random, here and there. Take a bit of black, a little bit of blue. You can start putting some more prominent ones in as it comes closer to you. Okay, just like that. Softening them again. It's all about softening with oils. For me, always you're softening the colours in. If this was acrylics, this would be very difficult because it dries almost as quick as you start putting it on. So then you can't get this lovely soft kind of feeling, especially with acrylics. So I love the oils just for that reason alone. It's much easier. Already you can see now we have a nice little background in, don't we? What I'm going to do next is just start adding a little bit of darker colour. Again with the same brush, a little bit of blue, a little bit of black, and a little touch of magenta. I just want to start going a little bit darker and sort of, I won't say dull, but not as bright, not as rich. It's just really to add some gradient to the painting, because sometimes in a painting, if it's all very flat and the same colour, it doesn't do it justice. I find adding a gradient from top to bottom or from bottom to top or whatever, adding a darker colour in and softening it down, it just gives the painting something, doesn't it? It just almost, it brings it to life. So I'm just very gently now bringing that darker colour down and just popping it in a little bit here and there. You see what I mean? Just a little flick of it. And have fun. I'm not even looking at the reference photograph when I'm doing this, to be quite honest. I'm not looking at it. I'm just kind of making it my own and seeing what happens. Because if you focus too much on a photograph, you become obsessive about everything that you're doing for the photograph. And it can become overwhelming and frustrating, because if you're trying to make something look exactly like a photograph too much, like a photographic representation, and it doesn't work, you become very frustrated. So now, that's not bad. I'm going to soften this with my makeup brush. Do you know what? I used to call this a blender brush, but realistically it's a makeup brush. I'm going to start calling it a makeup brush from now on, because yes, it is for blending, but it's a makeup brush. It's not any particular blender brush that I purchased from an art store. It's just a regular blender brush, a makeup blender brush, foundation brush I think it's called. So grab one out of your box or out of your partner's box if they have one and just have a go. I'm sure they'll understand. It's for a good cause, isn't it? Now, I have a lot of that done. I'm just simply now going to start adding some light colours to this. Some bright whitey kind of blues, just for a bit of contrast. Just to bring it to life, a little bit of a shimmer on there, yes? Let's take some phthalo blue. And let's take lots of white. And this is nice and thick. I don't have any thinners in this. It's just nice thick paint. Let's just start popping some of that in here and there. I might actually put some more blue into this. What I'm going for is kind of a luminous kind of a blue, if you understand what I mean. It's a tricky colour to achieve. I'm just going to start with this shade for now, look, just popping it in here and there, creating some movement in the water. Then I'll just start going a little lighter, a bit more white perhaps. And then just dabbing it around here and there, allowing the brush to just take it off as it's going, you see? Remember, the important part of this is just left and right flicks. Flicking the brush left and right gently and allowing the canvas to do the work. The canvas is just picking off the paint for me. That's all it is. So don't be shy. Okay, I'm just going to clean my brush very quickly and then I'm going to soften this back in. I don't think we need to spend too much time on the background with this. It's a very simple background look. Just a couple of little flicks of colour, dark and light, across and soften it together. That's it. That's all you have to do. Don't try and make it look exactly like individual waves or anything like that. Because the focal point is on this area, isn't it? Now, I might even soften the top away more, just to give it a bit more distance and depth. I think just soften it back out slightly as it comes up, giving it more depth. So it's going off into the distance. How about that? And I leave the kind of the lower part as it is. Softening this really well in now. Okay. That's not bad. I can come back to this and do a bit more later. There's no problem with that at all. If I'm unsure about something, I'll just come back to it later and add some more darks or lights. Okay? I suppose what we could do is maybe create just one or two points of interest up there. We could just add a hint of a wave just beginning to form, if you understand what I mean. So for example, if you took some black and some blue and a little bit of pinky colour, I could just go like this, look. And soften it across. Soften it out. And I could put another one, let's say here, just to give the impression of a wave sort of beginning to start turning over. Does that make sense? Soften it outwards. Now this may look wrong, I don't know, but I just thought I would like to try and see if I can just create a little bit of interest up there, and then perhaps just take some dark, so a little black and a little blue with some pinky colour again, and just give that a little hint of a dark up there. Now there may be no need for this, but I just thought it popped into my head as I was painting it just now. Maybe it might help add a little bit of interest into the painting. Maybe, maybe not. You tell me what you think. Should I have left it out or should I just leave it as it is? And look, it's very easy to take this out, just soften it back in again. But we'll leave it and see. You leave it and see how it looks. And maybe just one or two small, tiny little lights on top of that. Just little hints with the brush, look. Maybe just to give a little light on the top of them. How's that? I think that's fine. That just, I find it just added a little touch of interest into the painting, didn't it? We're moving on. So I'm now finished this section. I'm going to completely forget about this section and try and block it out of my view completely. I will use it just for reference as colours, but I'm finished now as far as I'm concerned. This is done. Moving down to the next section. This lovely greeny turquoisey colour. Let's get some cadmium yellow, mix it in with this blue and get some white. There's a lot of cadmium yellow, even some Naples yellow in this as well. So I'll be cautious, I suppose, and not do too rich a colour to begin with. I'm just going to go along and fill in this section here, okay, with this light colour, maybe a bit more Naples yellow. The Naples yellow is so forgiving. You can get away with adding lots of Naples yellow in. So it's a wonderful colour for that reason. I notice this canvas is dry down here now, so I'm just having to kind of scrape it along, which is fine. I don't mind, because it's only a small area, really. Again, little touch of thinners, Naples yellow, cadmium yellow, and a touch of blue. It's just going for a nice light, kind of a turquoisey green colour. Now it comes down into this section here, doesn't it? And then it comes back up. Let's take some white into that, lighten it as it comes up. A lot of what I do with painting is adding colours as I go. That's what I kind of tend to do. So if I say add a little white, I just pick up a little white, some Naples yellow, and then I mix that in to the colour which I'm painting. And here as well, look, I'm softening that up into the blue. So we have our basic kind of colour done, don't we? For me, the next step after this would be, I would maybe just soften this slightly along the top, just to take some of the brush stroke away with a soft brush. Even use a normal paintbrush if you like. There, just, you see what I mean? Just to soften it slightly. It makes it easier for our splash. The next thing I'm going to do is start adding some darks. I'm going to make some darker greens. Dark, nice, kind of turquoise greens. Maybe a touch of magenta in there as well. You see, just down here we have kind of these darker greens. As it's coming down, it's getting slightly darker towards the bottom, isn't it? Now I'm being careful with this. What I mean is, I'm not going to go on and put too much rich colour in too soon. So I'm just being very careful, okay? That's all. And with the corner of your brush as well, look, just soften it upwards. You see? So we're getting that nice graduation coming down now, aren't we? Maybe a hint of burnt umber. We'll try the burnt umber just for once, will we? Just to give it that deep kind of colour. Over here especially. It darkens right down here, doesn't it? I'm just literally creating the shadow, because the water is so thin, the light is coming through the water, okay? It's kind of popping through, but you have darker shades here and there then as well, don't you? Where it's just getting much, much thicker. So I'm just popping some darks in into those areas. Now I'm going to go much darker, take some blue, some cadmium yellow, and perhaps some burnt umber. Maybe even a hint of black. I'm using tiny, tiny amounts of paint when I'm mixing these colours. Really small amounts. Now that needs a bit more burnt umber, I think. It's a very dark kind of a green, okay? Very dark browny kind of a green. Little bit along there. And we have a lot of that through here as well, don't we? Notice I'm just scraping the brush along. Now I'll clean my brush very quickly, just get the bulk of that off, and I'm going to just soften all of this with the corner of my brush again, look. Create nice soft little circles, and that will give you the nice feeling of the water turning. There we go. I'm also going to add some vibrancy in this. A little bit of cadmium yellow and some naples yellow with a little hint of white. What I want to do is just add a little light coming in. Okay, that's better. A very kind of a light green popping in here and there. And it's kind of more a yellowy green than anything else, you see? A little bit of bright yellow, just to show perhaps a bit of sunlight coming in. Because the water is so thin, the sunlight is kind of coming through the water, isn't it? So, look, just a little bit of light yellow popping it through here and there. Now please just take your time with this. If you're having trouble following me, just stop the video, pause it, you know, that kind of thing. Just take your time, try not to be overwhelmed. It's very easy to be overwhelmed with something like this, especially watching someone else do it. I know what it's like, believe me. So I'm trying to just simplify this. But I know you want me to go into a bit of detail as well. So we've just concentrated now on this narrow section, that's all. Just with some small brushes. We've concentrated on that. Now I'm going to move on to the bluer colours. So coming down into a more greeny blue, phaylo blue, some magenta, maybe a touch of that purple, and then some white. But I'm putting a hint of green through this as well. Look, a hint of yellow. That will just make it a sort of a bluey turquoisey colour again. And it will help it soften into the other greens, you see. So because I have a hint of green in this colour already, it's just really helping soften colours together, you see. So go up here now, I'm just kind of softening this into the green here very quickly, look. So it just goes from a kind of a green shade down into a dark blue shade. Do you understand what I mean? And then it kind of comes down like this. Comes along. A little bit of white, perhaps. So the wonderful thing about the oils then is, you see, you can pick up the greens and you can move them around, which is just so nice. So nice to do. Let that just disappear in here, disappear. Okay, just take it and kind of wiggle it around so that it just almost disappears. You see? Now, I'm going to take some phthalo blue, have some of that purple. Now, purple or magenta, whichever you like, they're both very, very similar in colours, okay? I'm just going to put a nice deep blue across here. Right, the next step now is going to put the very dark blue in there. I just want to cover the entire area with a nice, dark, rich, warm blue. Magenta, phaylo blue. A touch of the purple perhaps, let's try it. I'm going to put that colour, look, that rich colour, right across here. Remember what I was saying earlier at the start of the painting? I want this to be nice and rich in colour and really give an impact. So that's what I'm doing. I'm putting this very dark colour in first now. And we can then soften lighter shades through all of this. And take a bit more magenta, a bit more purple, maybe a touch of white. So we're getting a bit more pinky with the colour. Soften that in. Remember, just a nice rich dark colour. That's all you need to worry about. A nice rich dark, kind of a mauvey blue. I'll come down here then, fill that in. So at least now we have a nice base to work on later with our colours. I'll stop here because we have light here, don't we? So I don't want to go too dark with this side. I'll make phaylo blue, little magenta and some yellow, then a little bit of white. So it's more of a kind of a soft, you see that? A kind of a soft colour over on this side. I'm going to take some burnt umber into that, some white, and just put this kind of a soft grey colour on this side. Now, just going to soften this in here, look. Just keep looking at your photograph where you see these colours and just pop them in wherever you see them, yeah? And again, this is just the very early stages. I'm only simply filling in the background colours just to get it ready. Swish it all together, look. Okay. That's looking pretty nice so far, isn't it? I'm going to pop a little bit of that light greeny colour just in here to this one, just to show a little bit of light popping through, and put it down. So we have this done so far. I think before I finish this part one, I might just show you a couple of little things. I'm going to take a pointy brush, okay? Small pointy brush, little detail brush, anything at all. I'm going to take some, let me see. I'm going to take some light colour, some white, a little touch of blue. Just paint on its own, okay? And I just want to pop in one or two little lights here and there. I just wanted to show you how to kind of get that soft blue kind of a colour. Let's go with some nice soft blue, look. I'm not going too light with this. So you could just kind of put some little wiggles like this, look. Wiggles coming down. A little bit bluer, I would say. And you see the way we have this nice one coming down like that, and then it comes up and it goes like this. Using this kind of soft blue, you can see what I kind of mean here. And it comes up like that, doesn't it? And it comes around. So just adding these soft little blue swishes through the water. You see how it just kind of brings it to life. You can see already there now how it just sort of brings everything to life, doesn't it? These very soft little, very soft brush strokes, look, soften it down. Just one of those little things I wanted to show you, because a lot of people would go in here with just pure white, and that's fine, but it would look too bright, and there would be too much of a contrast between it. So for example, if I go over here with a little bit of pinky colour, look, you'll see it just kind of, it softens into the background nicely, doesn't it? I'm just kind of wiggling my brush around. Now I'll go with some blue, some rich blue this time. Let's see what this can do. A bit of rich blue, look. And I know you probably can't see this right now, but when it's next to everything else, you will see a difference. These rich colours will kind of come to life. So if I take a very small flat brush, just to show you another little trick, right? If I take a very small flat brush and I mix a nice little mauve, let's say blue and some magenta with a little white. And I start putting this in. You see, it's a slightly lighter shade than the one behind it, only slightly, but there's you can see the difference. You see what I mean? You can actually see the difference in the colour. So we will do a lot of this in part 2, just kind of refining areas, bringing out dark areas and light areas. So one last thing I'm going to show you is we have some nice rich darks in here. I'm going to take some black, phaylo blue and some magenta, all right? We have some very rich dark, kind of pinky, shadowy areas. That's too much now. I put too much magenta on my brush there. Let's just add a little bit more blue. So there's some very, very dark areas over here. This is one side. You see that very dark area there? Let's just fill this in. Okay? And then soften it up slightly. So that's one dark area. You see how simple it is? Just look at where all your darks are and put them in. We have another very dark area around the centre here, don't we? You don't have to be any particular direction with your brushes or anything like that. Just wherever you see a dark, pop in a dark colour. Okay, another one along here, look. I'm looking for very subtle changes in colour, where there's just a few little dark areas creeping in here and there into the painting. This then will be our dark areas later on. Does that make sense? A couple of ones up around here, look, like that. Just wiggling the brush around here and there. All I'm doing really is just setting up the painting for later. That's all I'm doing. That's what it's all about. You're setting up your painting. That's what I like to say when I say things like that. I'm setting up my painting for later. So I'm just sort of basically, I'm kind of planning ahead for what I'm going to be doing later, just a little bit. So I'm just popping in my darks. A little bit of phthalo blue as well, look. Nice bit of phthalo blue there. That's a nice rich kind of a colour along there. Another bit there. We will then be going around all of these kind of dark areas later, you see. So it will all make sense. I'm simply filling in some of my darks. We have a lovely kind of a dark crest coming along here, don't we? Like that. Then it goes into a lighter colour, doesn't it? So I'm just going to fill that one in. as well. A little bit more blue perhaps. You see the way this kind of comes down here, doesn't it? And it disappears out into the light area. I'm just going to fill that in. It comes across and comes up like that, doesn't it? And disappears. So again, I'm planning ahead. I'm planning and planning and planning. I'm planning my colours for later. Because once we have all these darks in out of the way, it'll be much easier for us later on when we're putting in our lights. It'll just make life much easier for us, and you will see what I mean later in part 2, okay? Now, I'm just going to green that slightly. A little bit of yellow, a little bit of white, and burnt umber perhaps. I'm just going to make this a slightly muddier shade of green as it comes across here. Just very temporarily, that's all. Okay. Now, we don't have to worry about coming that far down on the painting, really. I just put that in while I had my colours here, as I was saying, just to kind of plan ahead a little bit. But you can just stop up around here if you like. Take a break and continue on. Absolutely. Please do that if you're worried at all about this getting too much for you. Please you can just stop and continue on another time. I'm just popping in. You see, what's happening now is I'm doodling. And one must never doodle. But I'm just doodling now because I'm having so much fun. I'm enjoying it so much. I almost don't want to stop. But I know I have to. Because we can tend to get carried away when painting, can't we? We can just kind of forget where we are, what we're doing. But I think sometimes it's good to just stop yourself and take a break from it, because you tend to rush. And that's what I tend to do, especially when I'm painting something like this. If I'm not careful and I start painting and painting and painting, I tend to kind of rush along without looking properly at the photographs, etc. So I think now I better just stop what I'm doing just for now. Maybe just get a little bit of a cool blue just up in here. Soften that in. Okay, my friends, I better stop because I'm only going to keep going and going and going, aren't I? I'm very bold. I shouldn't be. I should have stopped long ago. I'll call this part 1 finished anyway, okay, my friends? Part 1 finished. Let me know what you think. Okay, I'm going to stop at that. Our first phase of the job is done. I could continue on and put the splash, all that foam and stuff in, but I feel I might. Would I rush? What time is it? How long are we doing this now? I can't see the time. We are 40 minutes. I think we leave it. That's a nice slice of a tutorial now, isn't it? Part 1. Thank you so much. Let me turn here. I'll be right back with part 2. I will continue on while this is still wet. I'll just take a break. I'll go and have a cup of coffee. Say hello to my wife and my daughter. Have a little quick chat with my wife and daughter. See how they are, because I haven't seen them in a few hours. I'm busy out here in my studio. God, I have to go in and give them some of my attention as well. So I'll go and take a cup of coffee, take a quick break. I'll pop out and start working away on this for part 2 again while it's nice and wet. All right? Thank you so much. I'll see you very shortly, my friends.